And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. State it clear and state my case, of which I'm certain I don't know the words. I really don't. But all good things come to an end. And so now it's my turn to say goodbye. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode, my final episode of Season 3. If this is your first time, welcome. My name is Shira J. Rodriguez, and I am a novelist, podcaster, and filmmaker. And I know that this is probably a weird welcome because I am finishing this last season of the podcast. But I just want to say I'm very grateful for you. I'm so glad that you've been able to come here, and please feel welcome as I honestly divulge a little bit of the behind the scenes of this podcast. If you'd love to listen to what this podcast is about, basically I just invite you to sit down with me, have a cup of coffee or something, and just enjoy some conversation with some incredible writers that I've been able to, so privileged to invite onto this podcast. And so the whole vibe of this podcast is to really make you feel like you are at a coffee shop or sitting at a table at my house, just talking about writing and just inspiring each other and feeling like you have a hangout. Because I remember when I started this podcast, that was my goal. My goal was to inspire people, was to create a space that I craved. Because I didn't really have writer community when I started this. I was feeling so alone. And I know that there are so many writers who also feel so alone and so isolated. And I wanted to do something about that. It's crazy that I've come so far from when I started this podcast. When I started, I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I remember I would pace this room right here. And I started with an audio podcast, so I would grab my phone and start talking into the phone, and there were so many mistakes. You have no idea how many mistakes I made in just starting this podcast. Easily, I still have so many of those drafts in Spotify for podcasters, or now it's called Spotify for creators. At the time, it was Anchor, because it's changed names a lot. But yeah, a lot has changed since I started, and even since the beginning of this season, Season 3, I started it last year in March, and the first pilot episode of Season 3 was my incredible podcast episode with Courtney Whitaker, and I remember being so excited for that episode, for launching it. Gee, it's crazy how things change. I was so excited about it, and things have changed so much. When I was starting that season, I had no idea that I was going to be submitting to an anthology. I had no idea that I was going to be working on a short story that I was going to get published. I hadn't even thought of submitting to it at the time when I published. And when I did those interviews, I did them in February, I think. I pre-record them, and then I edit them. I would batch record a lot of these interviews, so my guests have been incredible. They've had so much patience with me with my very, very slow process. But they've been amazing and such a delight to work with. Something else that changed, what's crazy is that this season lasted almost for a full year, which is crazy for me because the first season 1 of this podcast was maybe no more than 9 episodes for sure, but maybe 6 or 7 episodes. That was my season. I was like, I'm done. I'm tired. But I took a break, and then I went back with season 2, which was also maybe some 9 or 12 episodes. I know my numbers are off right now, but I sincerely can't remember at all. I have friends who are so good at remembering. They're like, in episode this, we talked about this. I'm like, how do you remember? I don't even remember what I talked about at all. But so far, it's been about, I think, 40 episodes, peeps. 40 episodes since the beginning of this podcast. But in this season, I think we made it to like 21 or something. Yeah, I think it was 20 or 21, which is crazy. And it lasted all the way from March to, wow, it's been almost a year, because it's February right now as I'm recording this. And when I release this, it's probably going to be sometime in late February or early March. My goodness. Which means it's been about a year since I started this season. And how much has changed. At that time, it takes a little bit of time to even think about all the things that changed. Because I had almost forgotten, but I didn't have a writer community either. I ended up around that same time joining and actually hosting a group, like a writer's group at a bookstore at the time. And I also, a couple months later, joined a content creators community, which is amazing. I love them so much. It's crazy. So many things changed. I released my first short story and was part of an anthology, which was a huge dream of mine. I honestly didn't think I was ever going to be able to do that. I wasn't even sure how I was going to be published. It was my goal to get published, but I had no idea how I was going to do it. So, wow, that's just going down memory. Sorry, my sisters are doing something in the kitchen right now. I don't know. It's noisy. I know it is. And I do apologize, but it was the only time I could find to record because I was tired of it earlier today. And so, yeah, I came into this season so thrilled by the idea of really making this bigger and bolder and more exciting. And the crazy thing is that I was actually consistent this year as compared to most years where I am not consistent. I was not consistent. I published every 2 weeks when I could. My health was also not the best at the time. It's so much better now, especially as I realized that a lot of the eye issues that I was dealing with that triggered a lot of headaches and dizziness for me. A lot of it was stress related, so I've learned how to deal with it, both with knowing how to emotionally deal with myself, but also how to support my body when I am stressed or things like that, or with hormones and things like that, which just fluctuate so much and do affect our emotional state a lot. Wow. Oh, I even got to turn this into a video podcast, which I remember my sister was telling me, oh, you should start a video podcast. This is what all the big podcasters do if they want to level up. And I was like, girl, I don't have the bandwidth for a video podcast. I told her no. I ended up doing it. And here I am. I'm doing the video podcast, which I thought I was never going to do. But, life happens. And so I'm so glad I did, though. I feel like it was a great transition to YouTube, which was just really fun. That was another added thing, just getting more involved in YouTube. I've always wanted to do YouTube, but I was like, I don't think I'm pretty enough. I don't think I look good enough. I don't think I'd be confident enough on camera. I don't think it's something I could do. I just didn't see it, but I did it anyway, and I'm actually kind of loving it, and I am really excited to delve into it more in the future. However, with all these accomplishments and with all these exciting things, I feel like this season, literally and figuratively, is coming to a close in a lot of ways. And I'm going to be completely honest here, because this is something that I definitely want to start. Because here's the thing. When you're a host for a podcast and you're hosting guests, you have to think of it as inviting people to your house. You're not going to be complaining about how much work it is. You're not going to be complaining and telling people, oh my goodness, it took so long. Like when you open the door, you don't say, oh my goodness, it took so long to clean the house to get ready for you. I mean, we all know that happens, and we do it with pleasure and happily. But here's the point. I can't just be like spilling my guts when obviously the focus in these episodes was my guests and making them comfortable and bringing their insights and their stories to you. And that has been my focus for a lot of these podcast episodes. In fact, the majority of them have been really me interviewing other people, which is delightful. But I want to be able to give a glimpse into the life of writing and all these things, and just be able to share some of my life tidbits with you. And to be honest, for a long time, I didn't, because I'm spilling my guts so much here. I honestly didn't think that there was anything that I had worth sharing. Genuinely. for a really long time. I remember I was talking with my mom and she would be like, you have so much to give. Why don't you just start doing solo episodes? And I'd be like, Mom, but I feel like nobody really actually wants or cares to listen to what I have to say. I don't know that I have anything that could actually help people. I'd rather interview people who have actually written the books and actually done the stuff. What am I going to tell you about writing? But recently, I've really started realizing that I have a lot of things that I literally will start watching a YouTube video and start talking to the screen, being like, well, no, this is wrong because, or this is true and it isn't because. I guess I found that I did have something to say, and it was on topics that people were really interested in. I think also the fact that I got something published kind of and something under my belt gave me a little bit more confidence to say, hey, not that I'm a professional at it by any means, but I think it gave me the confidence to be able to realize that I can do anything I set my mind to. I thought it was impossible. It was going to be crazy to even get a short story published, and we did. Thankfully, to my amazing publisher. They're incredible, Wild Blue Wonder Press, and I definitely recommend them if you're a young writer and you want to really start your debut career with a short story, which I highly recommend. I might even do a whole video on that. I definitely recommend them. They're incredible. Wonderful people to work with, but also it's just so beautiful to be able to learn from them. I learned so much from the publishing process, but also from just communing with such sweet spirits and souls that were there, my fellow authors. I'm actually working right now through, I think I have my book over there, the anthology, which is back there. The anthology right here. I'm actually working through reading it. I'm at Talamaki House. Kel, don't kill me. Kellen Roth, who is our publisher, she's in charge of Wild Blue Wonder Press, and she's the founder. That's the story that I'm about to read. So I don't know if I said it right, so please don't kill me, Kel, if if I'm totally butchered the name and the words and everything and the pronunciation. But overall, just reading these beautiful stories and realizing that you're not alone has been just so beautiful. But here's the thing. Why am I telling you all this? Because I want to make sure that this actually matters to you. Because I'm not just going to be spilling my guts for no reason. The reason is that I think a lot of us have so much to share, but we don't realize that it's already within us. We have so many tidbits that people want to know. And I'm going to dive into this a little bit later because there's something really significant that I learned that will affect a different project that I'm going to be working on, and part of the reason why I'm saying goodbye to season 3. And I know what you're all wondering, is this going to be the final season of Her Reading Life podcast? Is it, what's going on? To be completely honest, I don't know. I'm just taking a break for now. I'm probably going to come back, but I can't 100% assure you guys, just because I am actually going to start a new project. But the point to all of my meanderingness is that I want you guys to realize that we underestimate how much we can do in a year. We overestimate how much we can do in a day, but we underestimate how much we can do in a year. And as I was thinking about all the things that I'd been able to accomplish this season, when I look at my situation now, sometimes I get frustrated with myself because I feel like I could have done better. I often see a lot of the mistakes and the frustrations and been like, wow, if I had done this, if I could fix this. But I don't realize that even amid the mistakes, I grew so much. And I want you to be able to discover the joy of that. Maybe you didn't do things perfectly in life or in your projects, but I promise you, every experience has served as a stepping stone to your goals. Even the things that you're like, wow, I got this rejection letter. Recently, I got rejected for something, and I had two options. I think it was Viktor Frankl who said something like that. Between acting or reacting, you have a moment of silence, and that is where you have a choice. Therein, I think he said, therein lies the choice. And so in that moment, it struck me. I was like, oh, I was rejected for something that I'd signed up for, and I was like, oh, I had my hopes and dreams kind of pinned on this. But then in that moment, I decided, wait a minute, it's up to me to take this as rejection of who I am. Like, you weren't good enough. You aren't worth anything. You should have worked harder. You should be better. If you were more successful, you would have gotten this. Or I could take it as rejection is only redirection. Every door that is closed is actually leading you to the right one. And recently, especially in January, but some in February too, I've been really wrestling with what direction I want to go to, because here's the thing. For 2 full years, for the last 2 or 3 years, my goal has been to publish a book. And I got one published. I'm still working on my novel, but somehow that goal was like, I want to have a tangible book in my hands. And now that I do have that tangible book in my hands, and I know I can write a story, I think at the bottom of my heart, ever since I graduated high school as a homeschooler, I really wanted to prove to myself that I could actually do the thing. And I was like, if I can just publish a book, we've got it. And that was like, for me, that was phase 1 of my goal plan. Of course, God works in mysterious ways, and things worked out differently, but better overall than I could have hoped. Where was I going with this? And so overall in my career, in podcasting, in everything, I'm like, what direction do I want to go to now? I love writing, but suddenly writing is something that I do because it makes me happy. Yes, as a career, but I don't force it. Because for some reason, there are these moments of inspiration that, boom, it takes me, and I write. And if I push too hard in the seasons that feel a little bit dry, I do end up burning out, and it's not good for my health. I get stressed, all this stuff. And I do take it as a discipline. I do my best to, well, I could do better, to write every day. But mostly I write as sustainably as I can. It's better to write as much as I can and allow my own process and my own creativity. A lot of spontaneity tends to get into it. I can go into how I write. It's not the most organized method, but it works. In fact, I've been incredibly prolific recently, surprisingly so, especially when it comes to screenwriting, which is something that I hadn't done in years. And I kept facing this blockage. I think something with writing the short story made everything click. My novel clicked. I started rewriting everything. I was like, oh, I see where this is supposed to go. And it's been coming out so much better than I could have ever hoped, because I suddenly understood something and something clicked in my mind. I don't know if it was like, I'm an author. I fully accepted it. I don't know if that's just what happened. But secondly, I don't know if writing that short story taught me the structure of how things were, and to accept the fact that the editing process is long, because we edited it so many times. The story changed so much from its original idea before I submitted it, and then even after I submitted it, we went through several editing changes and copy edits and things like that. The story was very different from where it started, and I kept being such a perfectionist and thinking that it had to be perfect when it started. And it doesn't. That's a lie. That's an absolute lie. And that, I think, unlocked some freedom in me to be able to explore so many things, because suddenly I wasn't afraid of failing. And I think fear of failure keeps so many of us back, not just in writing, not just in creativity or as a content creator, whatever. Being afraid of spilling your guts, of looking like a fool in front of the world, or falling flat on your face in front of people. It's just such a terrifying thing. And actually, I'm actively trying to fight that, because fear of failure, fear of what people are going to say, is often such a detrimental thing to your dreams. If you're afraid of what people are going to say, you're never going to do the things that actually matter to you. And people pleasing too. That's another thing. I could talk a long time about all these things. So many lies that I wish I could go back to my younger self and be like, shake her a little bit and be like, girl, you've been believing a lie, a complete, terrible, hideous lie. It's a big, ugly lie that you don't have to believe. You'll be so much happier if you stop believing these lies. And I think the older I get, the more I realize I don't have all the answers. I don't know as much. The things that I do know just highlight how much I don't know and how much there is to explore. But that's a delightful thing, because it opens up doors of curiosity and imagination, and to realize that no matter how much we explore about the world, about God, about culture, about the way the world works, about science, biology, astronomy, no matter how much we explore, there's always going to be more to explore. And so I don't know what it is, but it's something. After I was able to write that short story and go through the editing process and realize it's not that serious and you're not alone, it allowed me, somehow it opened the floodgates to start writing a whole bunch of screenplays, which honest to goodness, I kept hitting a wall every time I would sit down. I'd be like, I need to write the perfect screenplay. I wasn't sure how to do it. And then, ironically, if you've seen the previous episodes, I watched this video that Vanity Fair released on screenwriting. And I saw how Emily Carmichael, who's a screenwriter, wrote this thriller in 10 minutes. So I was like, oh, this is how it's done. It's not that hard. Wait a minute, I could have done this. And that perfectionism suddenly flew out the window with that one video. It brought up the idea of creating the writing challenge that I did in the previous episodes, but also taught me that screenwriting is not that scary. So I woke up one morning with this idea in my head, like the whole story flashed into my head. I don't even know how. I just woke up and I was like, I know this story from beginning to end. And I sat down, went straight to the couch. There's a couch right there. I'm not going to move the camera because then the lighting is going to get all off, but imagine that there is a couch, because there is one right there. And I sat down there, grabbed my laptop, and wrote. And I kind of love that. I don't know if I'm going to love it in 10 years, but for now I like it. And then I started writing a rewriting of Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 version, but modern and set in a college campus. And it was surprisingly so fun. I feel like I'm blending too many things in here, but something else that really influenced my creativity was the fact that I took a social media break to write some of those things, and I realized how much time my social media was eating away and how much time I spent scrolling on social media instead of actually doing what mattered. So a cousin of my dad's actually came to our house some time ago, and he was sharing his book with us. I'm so excited for it to release. Unfortunately, it's in Spanish, so if you don't understand Spanish, I will let you guys know if there is an English translation that releases soon. I really hope so, because it's incredible. It basically tells how he started as a taxi driver and eventually became a millionaire. It's really incredible. A really inspiring story. He read the introduction and the conclusion to us, and I am so thrilled to be able to read it. It's poetic, it's beautiful, and really inspiring. But something that he said stuck with me so much. It stuck to me like glue. And what he said was, people who don't live with the perspective of death live very differently from people who do. People who live without the perspective of death, they hold grudges. They are ungrateful. They complain all the time. People who live with a perspective of death, knowing that death, it could happen at any time, and our life is really quite short. Those people that have that perspective, they don't hold grudges because they know in the end, it doesn't matter. They are grateful and they chase after life with vigor, with passion, with vehemence. With vigor. They run after life. They race after what they want. And when he said that, it triggered something in me. And when he said that, I realized something. I asked myself, wait a minute. If I knew that I only had 24 hours left to live, would I be living my life the way that I'm living it right now? And it's funny how your mind gives you immediate answers. Mine was no, probably not. I probably wouldn't be focusing on the things that I've been focusing on. Yes, this last year was great, but there are things that if I had only 24 hours left to focus on, I wouldn't focus on them. I probably wouldn't be worrying myself as much as I do about how many followers I have, or how many interactions or engagement on my posts and things like that. I wouldn't be wasting time scrolling because I know that time is precious. I'd probably spend less time on Instagram. I'd probably spend more time reading. I'd probably spend more time in the Word. I'd probably spend more time praying. Probably spend more time writing. And one thing that I would absolutely change is that I wouldn't be stuck doing things I didn't want to do because I thought I had to do them. So many times we think that to be successful, we must do what everybody else is doing. And that's so not true. So I realized if I really did what I wanted to do, if I only had 24 hours to live, the thing that I would most regret not doing, the thing that I would be like, oh, if only I'd done this one thing, was filmmaking. It's always been my dream, and I just haven't wanted to talk about it too much because, I don't know, I just don't like to share too much about crazy dreams or the things, and I still don't disclose that much. I know that a lot of millionaires have been like, don't disclose your dream, don't tell people, don't blab too much about your goals and your dreams, do it instead, don't waste that energy doing it. And it's true, because I've found that when I talk too much about something and I don't do something, it doesn't make any sense. I'd rather do it and then get to talk about it. But I do want to actually start focusing on filmmaking. But to do that, I needed to make time because I don't have time nor the bandwidth to do everything. I'm not Wonder Woman, believe it or not. Although I usually don't believe it. I somehow stick to doing everything, which is not a great idea. So I realized that I would be running my life so differently if I knew that I had only 24 hours. So why wasn't I living that way? And what I realized was that it was fear. And I was talking with my sister. I know a lot of these conversations come up, but it's little epiphanies that kind of add up to this mountainous whole, momentous whole. And I was talking with her. I was really frustrated that day. I was like, man, posts aren't doing as well as I thought they would do by this time and all this stuff. And then she told me, but does this stuff actually really matter? Or are these just distractions? Are they actually keeping you from the thing you actually want to do? And I thought, and I was like, what on earth do you mean? But I need to do these things. And she's like, because sometimes I feel like you're scared that if you do the thing, you'll run out of dreams, or you'll get to that point and you'll be like, what was this for? And it was so true. I was so scared of that. But then I realized I was trusting so much in my dreams and the things I wanted to do. I didn't realize that if my dreams, if they were big and it took forever to get there, once I got there, God would make sure to give me more dreams. I kept worrying and running my life like I was in charge. And the truth is, you're not in charge of your life. And thank God you're not. Because if you were, it would all depend on you. And thankfully, it doesn't. And that's another thing that I've had to learn this year. I feel like this is the culmination of all my learning of this year. So that is the background as to what's been going on in my life, why I'm changing the direction of this podcast. So I'm not going to be doing as many guest interviews, frankly, because they just don't excite me anymore. Don't get me wrong, I love hanging out with people, but frankly, interviewing people at this point has become quite routine for me. I can do it in my sleep. And I remember the first time that I did it, that I invited Anna from Soaring Stories. It was electric. I remember I had so much energy tingling in my body from the sheer excitement and novelty of it. And I don't feel that anymore, not because I don't love these people, because I do, but I've just been doing the same thing for so long that it's become quite routine for me. And I used to do this for community. I did this because I thought this was the only way to find community and to hang out with people. And frankly, and honestly, and to be completely honest and raw, I thought it was the only way that people were going to chat with me. I can't believe I just said that, but I thought that was the only way to get writers to connect with me. They would think it weird if I said, hey, let's connect over a video chat, but they would be more than willing to come onto a podcast where they could be promoted and they could share it with others, and it just didn't seem as creepy or weird, but really what I craved at the time was community. But I've realized recently that you don't need a podcast necessarily to create community. It helps. It's a huge help. Not gonna lie. I'm not gonna tell you that it doesn't help. That is one of the best things that I had to making friends. Some of my dearest, closest friends worked with me on podcasts, and I've been able to meet so many people, so I don't regret that at all. But I realized that you have worth in and of yourself. You don't have to do anything to earn it. And that was something that took a little time for me to realize. And also, people actually started reaching out to me, and they were like, hey, you seem like such a cool person. I would love to connect with you. And those messages just made my day. Also, just taking time to voice message people. People actually voice message you back. And I was so afraid that people wouldn't answer me back in voice messages, or that they would find it weird if I sent a voice message. But frankly, texting is just not my thing. I get really exhausted by the fact that I'm so disconnected through screens from people. And so it's been such a delight to actually embrace the fact that I love talking to people. So I start sending voice messages, and people love them. So it's kind of a love language at this point. Thus, this is the end of season 3. I don't know if I'm going to be renaming the podcast. I don't know if I'll probably have some guests over, but majorly it's going to be more solo episodes like this, where I'm just being raw and real. Some of them are going to be video, some of them are not going to be video, and it's totally fine. They're going to be a lot more chill. And I just want to be honest, like really, really honest, because you guys know I have been super brutally honest in all these episodes. I have striven, is that the word? I have tried to be as authentic as possible. But I want to really invite you into my story and my life and my journey as I work towards publishing my first novel, as I work towards chasing my career in filmmaking, and not just that, but in really embracing and following what God has planted in my heart, and helping you, I pray, to chase the dreams that are in your heart, the deepest desires of your heart. Just hopefully being that cheerleader for you and showing you that if I can do it, you can do it too. You can do anything you set your mind to. Yeah, so this podcast may shift. I'm going to be probably taking a hiatus from this whenever this publishes. Like I said, I'm recording this in February, on February 12th right now. It's 10:26 p.m., so it'll be nice to take a break from the late nights. But I'm very excited about the new projects though, because I'm definitely embracing something that I thought for a long time I pushed away, but my parents were like, oh, you should start a podcast about this, you should talk about this, you should start on this. And I thought it just wasn't glamorous enough, but I'm actually starting a new education podcast, so on homeschooling and raising kids who are passionate for Jesus and using children's literature and education to help disciple children into kids who are on fire for Jesus, that you cannot quench that desire, that brilliance that they have, but that they do so with intelligence and imagination and passion and joy, you know, that they really are people who can go into life as conquerors and chasing their dreams, you know, people who are driven, who actually can make a change in the world, people who are intelligent and imaginative and up to any challenge that life faces. For a long time, my parents have been like, oh, you should totally do something related to homeschooling, especially since I designed my own curriculum for high school, since I've always been really passionate about education. I would be in high school and I would read Kathy Duffy's 101, was it 101 or 100 homeschool curriculum picks? Homeschool picks. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've read that book, but I would read it for fun. Delight to read those. Curriculum, education. And every time somebody talks about education, I get so fired up. But for a long time I was like, oh, why would I talk about education? That's not my thing. But recently I've been realizing I really am incredibly passionate about education, and so why am I pushing this away? And children's literature has been a huge passion of mine as well, and so I'm very excited to be delving into that, and you'll be getting so many of the deets very soon. Some of you probably have already gotten the deets, and I've been probably asking you guys for feedback on the ideas, on the trailer concept, and things like that, and topics that you guys would like to hear and see discussed. So I am thrilled for that. Again, yeah, I'm going to be focusing on finishing my novel, filmmaking, and again, being really raw and honest about life. Because there is something really beautiful about sharing your story genuinely and not being afraid of what people are going to think or the camera or anything like that. And there are so many things that I wish I could tell my younger self. But as I cannot tell my younger self these things, I can't go back. I can at least help someone else who may be in the shoes that I was in 3, 4, 5 years ago, and take them by the hand and say, hey, try to look out for this. Because if you do, you can change the trajectory of your life forever in the best of ways. So yeah. Meantime, during my hiatus or whatever planning things I'm going to do, to be honest, I haven't really organized how it's going to work out. But in the meantime, until I come back, you can absolutely watch all my previous episodes. There's 40 of them, including the ones that I started off with in season 1. I may even be listening. I just kind of want to listen to the whole season and the whole podcast and see how it's changed and evolved. You can listen to all 40 episodes. They're available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and wherever you get your podcast platforms. No, wherever you listen to your podcasts. All podcast platforms. You know what I mean. And then the more recent ones are also available now on YouTube. Something else, you can also subscribe so that way you don't miss my videos, any filmmaking things, any podcast episodes. Whenever I release that, you will be the first to know when you subscribe to my YouTube channel or to Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also follow me on Instagram, where I share a lot of tidbits from my daily life, especially on my stories, and snippets of these episodes, like the best portions. You can get those bite-sized ones on my Instagram. You can also get my anthology on Amazon. Currently, I don't know if I will have this up when I publish, but currently I have a form if you want a signed copy. I also have those, so just letting you know. But you can also order this on Amazon or at my publisher's website, wildbluewonderpress.com. I think that's what the thing is called. The URL is called. But overall, yeah. Until next time, friends. I didn't expect to get this emotional saying that. So until next time, friends, continue to live, give, and repeat. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for your support thus far in this journey. Thank you for following. Thank you for every single sweet message and kind thought and comment. For every person who asked to come onto the podcast, every person who said yes to every invitation. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, this place wouldn't be the same without you. And thank you, God, because He's been faithful every step of the way. Thank you. Thank you so much. Truly. So until next time, continue to live, give, and repeat. And I'll see you next time.